All right, it is officially time to start sound designing the actual video. This is one of my favorite processes when it comes to putting together the edit, just because sound design brings so much more life to our video. Now, I'm not going to be sound designing the entire video, but I am going to sound design a good chunk of it. The purpose of this lesson is so that you guys can see the raw, authentic way that I would go about sound designing a video like this, and how I use all the different tools and features we learned about in this module in a real world scenario. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So the very first thing that I want to do with this edit here is lower the volume of the music here. I'm just going to mute it because right now it's pretty loud, but we can see that if we look at our bus 1 here, which is the main output, we can see that we're peaking. We're hitting that red. We can also see in tracks 1 and 2, we are in the red there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just normalize the music here. I'm going to right click, normalize audio levels. And I think a good level for us to hit is -12 dB. Normally, if this was like background music, I'd probably aim for about -20 decibels. But since this is more like a music video, there is no dialogue. The music is really like the main audio in this, so I don't want it to be too quiet. I still want it to be pretty prominent in this. So I think -12 is a good target level for us to try to hit within this video. So I'm just gonna click normalize and we'll let DaVinci do its thing. And now we can see that all those audio levels are a lot lower. So let's just give this a preview. Cool. That sounds pretty good to me for now. And of course, at any point, if I want to raise those levels, I can. Later on, when we're doing the final mix, we're going to be playing with the faders for all the individual tracks. We'll be able to play around with the faders over here in our mixer to balance out the entire mix. So the first thing I want to do is just create some new tracks. And I know that there's a bunch of different elements within this edit. I don't want to combine like all the underwater sound effects with like the dirt bike sound effects and the longboard sound effects. I kind of want to break this video up into different categories. Also, I'm going to close off automation right now because we don't need to see that. But I'm thinking just to keep things organized, I want to break down all the different elements of the video into their own separate tracks. So with the dirt bike elements, I want to make 2 tracks just for that. So I'm going to add tracks here. Let's create 2 of them. And for now, let's make them stereo, and we'll see what kind of dirt bike sound effects we have within our sound library. If some of them are mono, I can switch one of the tracks to mono. But let's add both of those tracks over here. And let's make all of our dirt bike or all of our sound effects tracks a certain color. So for these dirt bike tracks, why don't we call these dirt bike SFX? I'm just going to copy that over to here. We're going to be running 2 tracks just for the dirt bike sound effects. And why don't we make all of these sound effects tracks a certain color? So maybe something that's very vibrant. Why don't we make them orange in this video? So we know that all of our sound effects tracks are going to be orange. So that's going to be helpful, especially when we're looking at our index over here. We'll be able to see very quickly what tracks are what. So I'm just going to hide the index for now. Let's open up the sound library and start looking for some sound effects. So I'll type in dirt bike over here and let's see what we got. Sorry if that's a little bit loud. These are pretty loud. These are actual recordings that I recorded on the set at the location of where we shot these dirt bikers. And I'm really happy that I did because I was looking for dirt bike sound effects later on in post on the internet. And it's hard to find some good ones. So it can always be very helpful to film sounds on set. One thing I wish I did in this case was actually record the audio of these longboarders riding their boards down the mountain, because I tried to find sound effects for that as well. It's actually really hard to find good longboarding sound effects. I found a ton of skateboard sound effects, but they don't really work. These guys are going like really fast down the mountain, so I had to kind of compromise. I found some other sound effects like wind and stuff that work well, but it would be nice to have some actual wheels on concrete. I mean, I have one sound, it's not the greatest. So in that situation, I wish that I could go back and actually record the audio of them riding over there. But let's focus on the dirt bike sound effects for now. And let's actually go back into the index. Let's hide the music tracks because those just take up space. And for now, let's hide the video tracks as well. So we have all this space right here just to focus on our dirt bike sound effects. So let's go back to the sound library. Let's find these moments that might work well for our video here. I think that sounds pretty cool. It's a little bit loud. Let's bring it in. So in and out points selected. I'm just going to drag. I think that could be a good moment for when the dirt bike first comes into the frame. I'm just going to lower the volume here so it's not incredibly loud. That works pretty well. Cool. That actually works really well because this second sound here, it kind of goes quieter here, and then as he hits, picks up. Cool. So I like that. One thing I want to do with this sound is actually pan it to go from left to right, or actually from right to left. So let's do that. Let's open up the inspector, shift tab. We have our pan setting over here. And at this first point right here, let's have it be fully to the right. And then let's move forwards in time. And about here, it's going to pan all the way left. Cool. That sounds really good to me. Just by panning it right to left, we've made it a lot more dynamic. It makes it feel like it was actually in that environment. Even though the sound was recorded in this environment, we've adapted it to work really well for this specific shot just by panning the audio from right to left. Awesome. So I really like that. Let's try to find something that's going to work well for this close-up over here. Ideally, I'd want it to be a little bit louder, or just something that feels like it's closer to the actual microphone. So let's go back to the sound library. Let's go through some of these other dirt bike sound effects. Okay, that part right there. That sounds pretty good. It sounds loud. Probably too loud. We want to make sure that we're looking at these levels too. Let's play it over here. Let's see where these levels are at. They're bouncing around about the negative 10 dB point. That's pretty good. Now, obviously, we don't want it to start abruptly like that, so let's fade it in here. Cool. Let's start it a little bit later. Let's turn snapping off. Cool. And why don't we actually just pan this as well? Because why not? I think it'll make it feel like it's more in that environment. So we'll start it off to the left. At the beginning, we'll go full to the left. And about here, we'll pan it to the right a bit more, not all the way. Cool. And I think we're going to have to fade that. Now, we can see this shot, it slows down a lot. So I'm definitely going to want to add some kind of slow motion sound effects or something to go with this. But I'm also going to want to change up the actual song as well. I feel like I'd want to add like a low pass effect to it. So why don't we open up the index? Why don't we turn on our music layers over here? And why don't we do some automation to this audio clip right here? So let's take a look at this. So at that point, I'd want the music to like quiet down to not necessarily decrease in volume, but I'd want to have a low pass effect applied to it. So we're only letting the low frequencies pass through. We're going to cut off all the high frequencies just to make it feel more like the song is part of the video. It's going to make it feel more dynamic. The way that we're going to want to do that is first to enable automation, of course. And let's go down to this track layer over here. And what we're going to want to do is play with the EQ. So let's do EQ band 6, just because I know that that's the one that I'm going to want to be messing around with. We'll select frequency over here so we can see the frequency. Let's go to A2 in our mixer. So A2 is right here. Let's double click the EQ. Let's enable band 6, because we know that with the equalizer, if we're trying to do a low pass filter, basically what we're going to want to do is allow the lower frequencies to pass through, but we're going to want to cut off the high frequencies. So the 6 over here, this is the furthest band to the right. And if we push it all the way to the left, then we're basically eliminating all of these high frequencies over here. So why don't we just take a listen to this? So I'm going to use the range tool R to make a selection over here. So we're going to loop that. So that's what I want it to sound like. And then I want it to go back up. So we could practice this a couple times. Lower, back out. So now that we know what we want to happen at that point, I've kind of like experimented with it right there. Let's give it a try. We're not going to record the automation with the pencil tool. We're going to record it live. So we'll start the playhead over here. and we have EQ enabled here. Let's disable plugins because the only thing that we want to be automating right now is the EQ. Touch, I'm going to leave it to latch, and the on stop, I'm going to leave it on return. Those are the settings that I use most of the time when I'm doing this kind of work. They are non-destructive to the other automation that I've already done on the track. So for now, this is what I'm going to be working with for most of the automation we're going to be doing in this edit. Okay, so as soon as I press play, I just want to be ready to start making these adjustments. I'm going to be watching the preview over here. So let's give this a go. Let's press play. Cool, and we can see that the automation for that was recorded. Let's give it a listen, see if we like it. If we don't, we can just hit Command Z and retry it. Okay, I think I might have dipped it a little bit too low, so I'm just gonna hit Command Z. Let's try that again. Cool. I'm gonna try it one more time. I think that did a pretty good job. Let's take a listen. Cool. I'm happy with that. And I know at this point, I'm going to be adding a bunch of sound effects too. The low pass effect is basically going to allow us to hear all the other sound effects a lot better because the music isn't going to be taking as much space in the mix here, which is nice. So at this point, we can start adding some sound effects for this section here. Again, I'm going to turn off the music layers because we don't want to have them taking up space. Let's keep automation on so that we can actually hear the automation that's going on. Let's open up the sound library and let's look for some slow motion sound effects. So let's see what we got over here. Not the biggest fan of that one. That sounds interesting. That one's decent. Doesn't look like I have too many. That one's pretty cool. Let's give it a try. 4-5. Let's bring it in here. And this is not really like a dirt bike sound effect. I would consider this more like a whoosh. So maybe we just create this as the whoosh track. I already know that I'm going to be adding lots of whooshes all over this edit. That's something that I do with every edit. So I think the whoosh sound effects can have their own track for this. It's not super important, but I guess this is the way that I find myself working recently, is just creating more tracks, and that just makes it easier for later on in the mix. If I want to very quickly make fader adjustment to one sound, it's going to be easier for me to do it like this because I know that that type of sound is just within one track, and I'm not going to be playing with like, you know, a track that has dirt bike sound effects and whoosh sound effects and water sound effects and all that. But, you know, to each their own, find out what works best for you. I know a lot of sound designers will actually just, you know, consolidate all of their sound effects into like 3-4 tracks and mix them all around and stuff. And that's fine because you can also get that to work. I just want to stay a bit more organized, and I'm okay with having a bunch more tracks. So that works with me. Let's play around with this. Cool. That works really well. We're just going to want to fade that in. Cool. That sounds great. And I'm probably going to want some whoosh or something. And I'm also going to want the dirt bike sound effect as well coming out of that. So it sounds like it's, you know, going from quiet to loud. It's coming out of that slow motion effect. So let's play with this. Cool. That actually works pretty well. That works pretty good. I actually really like that. Cool. Yeah, that's actually perfect because you see that bike speed up there at the end, and then the sound effect just really sells it. Nice. Why don't we find some whoosh or something to go with that? There's tons of whooshes here. Sometimes it's not the best to have millions of sound effects. That one is dope. Pretty sure this one is from Bryn's sound effects pack, which is awesome. There's so many good sound effects in there. The Flight Edition one, I really like that one. This is Visual Tone. My friend Bryn, his company, they put out a bunch of cool sound effects. They've been doing lots of packs, and I really, really like their Flight Edition one. Why don't we raise that volume here? So we could see that we have track 6 here. It's peaking at one point. And that is this rock crumble here. I believe that the levels are going up so high because this is a very like bassy sound. I think that there's a lot more audio here in the low end. So why don't we grab the frequency analyzer, add it to this track over here. And let's just take a look at this sound. We've got it soloed. Why don't we use the range tool to mark that in and out point, and let's just play this back. So let's do that. So you can see that there's a ton of low end on this clip here. So why don't we actually just try to lower that with our equalizer, band 1. Let's bring that down. So it's not taking up as much space in the low end, just because I think the low end of this sound effect plus the actual track, they're adding up and causing things to peak. So maybe I cut off a little bit too much of that low end. So might have been too much. Also, this dirt bike sound effect might be a little too loud. Cool, but I like that. I love it. That sound just makes things feel so much more real, like we're actually there. It's so much more immersive. I love it. Cool. And, you know, we could probably add some sound effects to the actual, like, dirt flying around, too. For that, you know, like, what sound would this sand make? Like, what sounds would we hear if things were actually slow motion here? Like, I don't really know. So that's where we can start, you know, getting a bit experimental. But at first I was thinking maybe we could like slow down one of the dirt bike clips, but I'm not sure. Let's just take a look at like slow motion sound effects. Slow motion. That one sounds pretty cool. Maybe we can throw that in when we're going like back out, when we're speeding back up to normal speed. So where would this go? Dirt bike sound effects or whoosh sound effects? I'm not sure. Let's throw in the dirt bike for now. Now, obviously, we've like fully peaked there. This is a really loud sound. It's an interesting one. Cool. I like that. Now, I feel like we could probably have some kind of better sound effect for when we initially slow down. And also, I'm feeling like this one's too loud now. Let's fade this out. Yeah, there should definitely be some kind of sound here at the beginning. I feel like it feels a bit empty. Let's go back to our dirt bike sound effects, see what we can find. Very loud. We'll have to make that a lot quieter. It's literally blasting in my ears. Sorry about that. Let's make this a bit quieter. And maybe we can... What we're going to want to do is actually turn on layered audio editing. Make sure we have that turned on. So that way when we overlap like this, we're not actually overlapping. We're not overwriting anything. slow down sound effect. Now, obviously, these sound effects are pretty loud right now. They sound good. They are overpowering the music a little bit, a little more than I would want them to, but that's exactly where, the mixing side of things comes into play. So we'll play around with that stuff later on with mixing. But for now, I'm really liking the way that we are, constructing the sound design, mixing together all these different sounds to work well with the visuals. I think that this is looking pretty good so far. And of course, this process just requires constant repetition. This is something that, just like anything, whether I'm putting together a complex transition or not necessarily color grading, but, sound designing, I'll find myself just constantly watching something over and over and over and over again, because that's just like how you see the little imperfections and kind of just like massage things through. You work through it to make it exactly how you want it, and that requires you to watch things over and over again. So that is just part of the process. You're seeing the real process of how I sound design right now.